Hello, Andrea. Great to have you here. All right. Well, we're trying to get this webinar in at 30 minutes today, so I'm going to go ahead and kick us off as everybody keeps sort of getting settled here in Zoom. As some of you might know, this week is actually Pro Bono week, and so we couldn't be more excited to welcome you to unlock the potential of skills-based volunteering with Taproot. My name is Alicia Schmidt, and I'm the VP of Member Impact here at Pledge 1%. Next slide, please. If you're not familiar with Pledge 1%, very simply, we are a global movement that inspires, educates, and empowers every company to leverage its assets to be a force for good. If you want to learn more about us, you can check us out at pledge1%, spelled out there.org. Next slide here. While we love your dog, kids, birds, partners, we don't want them to accidentally interrupt our call today, so we're going to keep everybody on mute during the webinar. You can add questions or comments in the chat today. We'll answer questions at the end of the presentation. So again, you can use the chat functionality or the Q&A feature here in Zoom, and we'll take those questions at the end. Also, we're going to send out a recording of this webinar to all registrants, so you can pay attention during the call and you'll get that recording after. Additionally, it's important that you stick around until the end of the session, just because we have a quick poll that allows us to continue to improve our programming and delivery. So please stick around and give us some feedback. Now I'm really excited to introduce our speakers today. First up, we have Sivi Ananthasingam. I think I got close, probably not exactly right, but I apologize for that. Sivi is a senior consultant with the advisory services practices at Taproot Foundation, a leading nonprofit that champions skills-based volunteering. With over 7 years of experience in the social impact sector, Sivi is dedicated to harnessing partnerships to craft innovative cross-sector solutions for pressing global issues. Her academic background includes a bachelor's degree in neuroscience and a master's in social entrepreneurship from the University of Southern California. She put on here, fight on Trojans. I don't know if I can say that. I'm not I feel like I'm probably not the best person to say that. I'll explain that later. Anyway, next up, we have Susan Eckardt, who is the director of the Taproot Foundation. And for over 20 years, Susan has been deeply involved in the engagement field across nonprofit, public, and private sectors. Passionate about connecting resources and people to amplify growth and impact, she currently serves as the co-director of advisory services at Taproot Foundation, a US-based nonprofit dedicated to skills-based volunteering. In her free time, she enjoys walking her dog Carmi and devising dinner plans before her two teenagers, ask what's for dinner. All right, Sivi and Susan, I'm going to let you take it away from here.
Thanks, Alicia. And Sivi and I are delighted to be here. And I think too, when we think about the similarities between the vision for Pledge 1% and Taproot Foundation, there are some similarities. Is at the core, we believe that when we leverage our assets, so for Taproot Foundation, we're focusing on employee skills, that there's just a greater sense of purpose for employees and also enhanced impact in the social sector. So a little bit about Taproot Foundation, as we mentioned at the intro, that we are a US-based nonprofit, and our mission is to connect nonprofits and small businesses to skilled volunteers to work on specific business challenges with the goal of enhancing organizational impact, scale, and impact, enhancing organizational capacity, scale, and impact. While we are based in the US, we do adapt our programming both in terms of like the cultural values and the language we use if we go abroad. We have 2 lines of services that we offer. One is Taproot Plus, and that is an online marketplace for eligible organizations and interested volunteers. You can be an employee from a company, or you can be a professional at large to sign up. And then we also have our advisory services programs where we work with our company partners, and that will largely be what we'll be talking about today. We have a range of programs that start off with employees being involved in about like 3 to 4 hours on up to multi-week programs. We'll go to the next slide. So we just want to ground you a little bit in how we are using our terms for skills-based volunteering. In most of our slides, you'll see that we reference skills-based volunteering, and there will be an occasional reference to pro bono service. In our view, they are interchangeable terms. You can see on the slide how we're actually defining skills-based volunteering. It is really looking at your individual skills, your experience, and time to focus on a defined business challenge for an organization. That business challenge is really looking internal within the organization's like processes and systems versus providing service at the client level. So when we think of internal business challenges, they really can run the gamut. It's, the example that we have on the slide, focusing on HR. It can focus on IT, data, strategy, operations, and marketing. One example, in addition to what we have on the slide, is focusing maybe on a tech assessment. And so where we would work with an organization to map out like the existing infrastructure that they have, both the hardware and software, identifying what pain points and duplications they have, and then creating a roadmap for improvements. If you want to hear more about other skills-based volunteering examples in different functional areas, let us know in the chat, and then Sivi and I can suggest what we've seen work well as a capacity building project, and will also challenge us to think quickly, which is one of the things that we ask all the volunteers that are involved in these experiences. We'll go to the next slide. So really, I had to distill the case for skills-based volunteering into some few quick facts. This could be its own presentation, but really, why is this good for business? And when you think about the nonprofit impact that skills-based volunteering has for organizations, I think there's a couple different layers and elements to it. Most of the nonprofits that we work with are saying that they've seen a strong increase in demand for their services. Some of this is from the pandemic. Some of this is changes in government funding. I know my local food bank in Sacramento, they've seen 100% increase in services in 2023. So this type of demand puts a lot of pressure on nonprofits' internal systems. And we also know that typically, and we can relate at Taproot, we typically have about 2% of our operating budget to support these internal systems and processes, whereas companies often have up to 20% of resources for internal infrastructure. So that creates kind of the pain point. So as a result, nonprofits look at really cost-effective and free solutions to support their internal capacity building. And when we are able to bring volunteers and nonprofits together through our work, we see that nonprofits really report increased effectiveness. In some cases, they report increased revenue, and also sometimes like increased outreach. Now, on the company side, we know that really people represent like the biggest asset for companies. You all represent values and brands of a company, and that is tremendously important. So you can, one of the ways to think about is like the recruitment and retention impact the skills-based volunteering has is very positive. We also see during our engagements that there's just natural skill development that happens. Often that skill development is more of some of the soft skills. So focusing on client engagement, collaboration with the team, communication skills, project planning. And then the functional skills and or the subject matter expertise skills are reinforced through these experiences. And finally, I think, the stat I shared around employees reporting a close friend at work, so on the lower side, I think that these kinds of experiences really do create connection with one another. And so it could support people who might be experiencing some loneliness at work, that they report like increased networking. They know that they have another business contact that they can reach out to if they're facing a business challenge. We'll go to the next slide. So we wanted to talk through what we were thinking, like 3 quick ways. I shouldn't say quick, but 3 ways to optimize skills-based volunteering, because there's a lot of depth with each of these steps. Some companies might be doing well with like nonprofit engagement, so the far right, and then others might be working really hard on the culture of engagement piece. So we'll kind of talk through some of the different steps we see to optimizing skills-based. So if we could go to the next slide. So when we're thinking about a culture of engagement, one of the things that we would do in working with companies is really encouraging them to first take a step back and kind of go through that value proposition of why skills-based. So thinking through what existing opportunities you might already be offering employees to to be engaged in? Is it, a hands-on volunteering experience? Well, then you could maybe layer on a different type of experience, which would be skills-based. It could be, I'm thinking of a company I'm working with, they have it was multiple months of skills-based volunteering experiences, and they actually wanted to create a shorter term experience. So you could add it in that way. Or you could look at your calendar of engagement and realize that you actually have a gap in part of your year and think about like skills-based would be a good fit within that maybe month or 2-month period. So really kind of trying to understand what kind of value add this experience would offer, I think is an important part of the process. The second piece is looking at opportunities and constraints. And we do hear that for our skills-based volunteer employees that sometimes they'll say like, it was really tough to find time to be able to give my time and attention to this kind of experience on top of my day job. So, if possible, we would really try to support your company in creating an engagement policy or volunteer time off policy that gives employees the opportunity to be involved in these experiences. I work with one company who decided to make a 40-hour commitment. So they give 40 hours each year to employees to be involved exclusively in skills-based volunteering. What that does is really put this opportunity on equal footing as client engagement work and says that this is really valued. Most of the companies, according to CECP, it's about 41% offer at least 8 hours. And that is certainly something that, you could have a skills-based volunteering experience with that time frame. And then the final one is around building buy-in. And there's many different influencers we could talk about, but one I just wanted to focus on is around kind of really engaging senior leaders. We've seen senior leaders be able to kind of really tap volunteer employees to be involved in these experiences, both as a participant or as a team lead, or send out like a general message of saying like, this experience really is going to add value to our company. We encourage you to sign up. Another way that we really love to involve senior leaders is by having them serve as like an executive sponsor of a project. And so that gives the employee team exposure to a senior leader and also really constructive feedback on the deliverable that they are working for their nonprofit partner. So now I'm going to turn over to Sivi to talk about the second step.
Thank you, Susan. Awesome. And so the next step here is optimizing and discovering peer skills to inspire collaboration. So really taking the time to understand what skills you have available within your organization's teams and what capacity those teams have to contribute to an SBV program. So building on what Susan had added during the last step. But one of the great things about pro bono or even hands-on volunteering in groups is that it can really help break down silos between different departments or groups of employees that may not have the chance to interact. And Susan mentioned earlier that loneliness factor that can be heightened, especially in remote workers. So an opportunity with SBV is taking advantage of virtual programming that can allow employees from different offices, different business units, different teams within those business units to work really closely together in support of a nonprofit partner. And with many SBV projects, the teams working together are cross-functional to better address the various aspects of the nonprofit's strategic challenge. And so this alone can help with building new relationships between colleagues and foster cross-departmental collaboration that can be helpful in the future as they're continuing to drive your mission forward. And so as you're thinking through what this looks like for your organization, we encourage you to think about what your organization's unique sweet spot might be. And so that could be thinking about your business products and services. I think quite a few of you on the line today are joining us from tech companies. And as Susan mentioned earlier, about 2% of budgets go towards those internal processes, internal teams. And so we see that many nonprofits don't have budget for full IT departments. And so those tech infrastructure folks, those AI and engineering folks, those data management skills that your employees have are highly sought after by nonprofits. So think about if there is a connection between your business products, your business services, and the employees that you have within your main lines of service that could connect to those nonprofits in that way. With that, however, you can also leverage other business units, of course. So do you have a strong marketing or HR team who'd love to contribute their skills? Do you have business strategy folks who have experience in strategic planning or growth strategy? These are all very transferable skills that nonprofits are looking for support in and guidance in as they are building and growing their impact. And so it's really up to you all to decide what skills and expertise you're working with within your organization. And as Susan mentioned, what bandwidth those employees have to share their skills. If a department is strapped for time, or maybe a smaller department than the others, it might not be the right time to push for their participation in an SBV program, and that's okay. If we could go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And the last step that I'll highlight here is engaging your nonprofit partners. If your company already has grantees, this is just another way that you can support them that doesn't require a financial contribution. So strengthening their capacity so that they can continue to grow their impact. However, if your company doesn't have grantees, if you're newer to CSR work, social impact work, there are other ways that you can identify nonprofits to support. So one way that we've seen before is that if your company matches employee donations to nonprofits, you can generally pull a list of the top organizations or causes that your employees are interested in supporting and start there. Alternatively, if you have employee or business resource groups, most ERGs and BRGs work really closely with nonprofits that align with their individual missions. And so they may be able to help connect you to nonprofits that they have already vetted and have deep relationships with. But ultimately, the goal here is, again, that sweet spot. So making sure that the nonprofits that you involve align with your company's unique CSR goals, as this will ultimately tie back into getting the senior leadership buy-in for SBV programming, which Susan mentioned earlier. We can go to the next slide, please. Thank you. And we want to leave you here with a couple of points in thinking about how to get started. So I want to emphasize here that skills-based volunteering isn't a one-size-fits-all type of solution. Each organization should think through your CSR goals, your talent development goals, as well as the needs of your different stakeholders to identify the right option for your company. So ask yourselves, what program size and length might make sense for us right now? Does it make sense to run an in-person or hybrid or fully virtual program depending on the geographic spread of my employees? All of these different factors will come into play when deciding what that right step is for your organization. But ultimately, you can start small with something like a pilot program that has just a few nonprofits and employee teams supporting them. This could also mean starting with specific departments, like running a program with just your tech department or just your marketing department, or even including a skills-based volunteering opportunity as an action learning component of an existing talent development program. So say that you have a cohort learning program that is specifically for the vice presidents within your organization, adding that action learning component, which is a skills-based volunteering program, allows them to use and develop those skills in a real-life setting through supporting a nonprofit. So something else that you could consider. But it just allows you to start with a small set or small group of employees. And then once you figure out what works well for your organization, start to expand out to include more departments, more teams, more employees. And again, if a team-based program isn't the right fit right now, there's always Taproot Plus as an option, which we've linked here, where your employees can go in at their discretion and sign up to support a nonprofit from the projects that have been submitted. So again, not a one-size-fits-all option for all companies, but thinking through what works best for your unique situation. Okay. And with that, we dropped our LinkedIns here, but if you'd like to connect with us, but also happy to open up to any questions.
Thank you, Susan, and excuse me. Thank you, Susan and Sivi. If anybody has questions, you can enter them into the chat window or in the Q&A feature that's part of Zoom here. While we're waiting for folks to enter questions, I'll just ask a quick one. I think one of the biggest fears around pro bono or skills-based volunteering is that employees might get sucked into huge projects or continuing projects, right? They might nonprofits have a lot of needs. And so I think, there's this potential to sort of get lost in a project. Can you talk a little bit about how do you create a right size scope for a project? How do you ensure that employees can sort of, you know, get into these projects and get out of these projects in a productive way?
I'll share one tip and then Sivi, you can join in. I think one of the things that we try to do is really understand where the nonprofit is in their journey on the business challenge. And so they may say like, we want a specific CRM, and that's kind of our business challenge. But then when we kind of unpack where they are in that process, so understanding the sequencing, we actually realize, well, we wouldn't, for say, an 8-hour program, be able to deliver a new CRM and feel like we can hand it off in a sustainable way. But what we could do is either start identifying the business requirements for a CRM, or we could actually look at and say, like, how are you actually mapping your data or collecting your data, and in what tools are you using collecting that information? So trying to understand that sequence and the different steps that they have taken where they may have not been successful, and ultimately what their end goal is, helps us understand like, okay, well, based off this program, we can focus on this specific area within the business challenge.
I think that's exactly right. It's getting down to the root cause of what that challenge is rather than focusing on, you say it's very easy to focus on the symptoms rather than the root cause of it. And so finding that root cause, one of the methods that we like to use and encourage our teams to use is asking why 5 times, because it helps you get down layer by layer to where that root cause really is.
Oh, that's a great tip. Another question, is there a difference between engaging junior versus senior employees, and what does that look like?
I can start with the junior employees. I think it's really important for companies to engage junior employees in these opportunities. It allows for them to build leadership skills, become more comfortable collaborating with colleagues, become more comfortable working across departments and working with folks that they may not have known before going into that project. And so we are very big on engaging junior employees in that. But I think the biggest thing that we've seen with engaging employees who are more junior or earlier in their careers is generally just making sure that manager approval and manager involvement is incorporated. So it can maybe feel a little bit harder or as if it's a barrier for junior folks to engage in these programs on top of their day jobs if they don't have that approval. And so something that's very big for us is making sure that that manager approval is built into the process. Stephen, would you like to take?
I think on the senior piece too, I mean, that manager involvement and engagement and awareness is also important. Like, we hope that everyone's going to walk away with us with understanding how it connects with our professional growth. And so like, I remember one of the team leads I worked with who was more senior and was considered a high potential employee. The way that she was able to lead a very complex multi-week program really positioned her to be seen by others in the company and to get that promotion. And she was able to document, like, this is what I gained from the experience. And so that they see that this is an important kind of learning opportunity.
And along those same lines, we have a question in the Q&A feature here. How can you incentivize employees to participate in skills-based volunteering?
I think an incentive is having that senior leader exposure. I think that is something that is giving them a chance to learn in a way that feels like it's not, I want to say, as high stakes in their day job. That feels a little different. So it's like, I'm willing to take some risks here. I'm also going to receive some support. Taproot certainly provides that support along with senior leaders. So I think that exposure is a good incentive.
And Susan, I would add to that the stat that you mentioned earlier around Gen Z and how they're looking for those social impact opportunities as they're coming into the workforce. And so that alone, that opportunity to engage in something that is bigger than their day-to-day job has been a driving force in motivating employees to sign up for these programs.
I'll also just say that in my experience, I've done a lot of skills-based volunteering in my time, and I actually really appreciated getting an additional grant. So I worked for a company that actually made a cash grant to the nonprofit where I was doing skills-based volunteering, and that really also was a great incentive for me, just based on my personal experience. So we have another question here in the chat. Do you see an SBV project working with employees, but outside the company environment? Sometimes employees are willing to give more time than what has been allocated by the company and for longer periods of time.
I think Taproot Plus would be a great option, because you can do that not affiliated with your company environment. You can have a personal account, or certainly sign up with your work account, and that could allow you to continue on longer periods.
And we have seen folks who started during a cohort-based program continue on to support their nonprofit. It doesn't need to be the full team of employees that started with the organization during that program, but we have seen that employees continue to engage because it drives them, it gives them that meaning, that purpose that they're looking for.
Great. Thanks for the question, Louisa. Anybody else have questions before we sign off today? You can put it in the chat window or in the Q&A feature. We'll give everybody just a minute here if you have any final questions. While we're waiting for that, I'll just say thank you, Susan and Sivi. I know you guys have a busy schedule this week, so just appreciate you taking the time and spending our 30 minutes with us today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for
All
having us.
right. It doesn't look like there's any other questions here. I will say Taproot has really led the way for many companies who have added skills-based volunteering to their social impact programs. So again, just thank you for all the work that you all do. And we're going to go ahead. You guys can actually jump off. We're going to throw up a poll now. So we would love to hear from everybody who's out there. Just let us know how we can do things better if we can. Again, just helps us with our future programming. But thank you, everybody, for joining today, and hope you have a great rest of your day. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.